allowing me to interact with you. I also would like to thank Fulbright program people to allow me to visit United States and have my research also, and I can have a chance to interact with people like you.
I thank you. Let it go for too long. Let me log in. Just keep moving that mouse a little bit.
As you mentioned, the idea is we will have this video, and after that we will have some discussion. So I will be happy to answer your questions based on this. If you have any question related to it, I'll try my best to answer.
So, we have finally encroached upon the giant India. Some of you have been waiting a long time for this episode. I'm just going to say straight up, you all know India is incredibly complex and diverse. Even Indians have trouble understanding their own country. Obviously, I won't be able to scratch even the surface in this episode, but I'll try my best. A lot of you Indian geographers have helped me along the way, so thank you. And without further ado, let's begin. It's time to learn geography now! Hey everybody, I'm your host Barbie. This place doesn't even need much of an introduction. Everybody has heard of India. It's big, it's loud, it's colorful, and most importantly, it has a plethora of confusing territorial anomalies that I just can't wait to cover. Here we go. There's an old saying, India is a place where everyone is in a hurry, but no one is ever on time. First of all, India is located in South Asia, right on the Indian and Arabian Seas and the Bay of Bengal, bordered by 6 other countries, so close to 7, but that land bridge between Sri Lanka got wiped away like 600 years ago by a cyclone. India is divided into 29 states and 7 union territories, with the capital New Delhi, which acts as its own administrative unit, located in the capital territory. Keep in mind that New Delhi is actually just the name of one of the districts in the capital territory, made up of 11. The largest city, however, is actually Mumbai, with New Delhi, Bangalore, or Bengaluru, and Hyderabad following after. However, the 4 busiest airports are Delhi Indira Gandhi International, Mumbai's Chhatrapati Shivaji International, Bengaluru's Kempe Gowda International, and Chennai International in the south. You know why I'm smiling. This is my favorite part of any episode we ever make. Territorial anomaly time. India is loaded with strange borders and deliciously complex demarcation lines. First of all, what exactly is a union territory? In the simplest way I can put this, union territories are places that are too distinct to be incorporated into a state, but too small to have their own local governments. The first one, of course, is the Delhi National Capital Territory, where the capital lies. Chandigarh is a post-independent city constructed to replace Lahore as the capital of the Punjab area after it was split up between India and Pakistan. Then you have the island territories, the smallest one, Lakshadweep, and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands. The Andaman Islands being home to one of the last uncontacted people groups on the planet, the Sentinelese tribe, whom have been hostile to visitors and are therefore left alone, as well as the Nicobar Islands, which actually used to be a short-lived colony of Denmark. Finally, the 3 remaining territories are former European colony towns and ports. Dadra and Nagar Haveli, Daman and Diu, which are separated by about 200 kilometers across the Gulf of Khambat, and the most confusing union territory, the French-speaking Puducherry, which is actually split up between 4 district cities across India: Karikal, Mahe, Yanaon, and Pondicherry. Pondicherry is strange because it has 11 enclaves within the Tamil Nadu state. And in this area, you can also find that experimental hippie-ish commune with a little bit of controversy. Look it up. Don't forget, here, the eastern states, also known as the Seven Sisters, are connected by this incredibly narrow 27-kilometer wide pathway known as the Siliguri Corridor. This pathway is like a crucial artery that completes the India puzzle, or so you would think. Now let's discuss the juicy stuff. Now in the China episode, I already talked about the disputed areas with India, such as Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh, the latter pretty much just belonging to India as it's almost completely inhabited and operated by Indians. So let's move to the other disputes. Now, as of 2015, the Bangladesh episode is already outdated, as India and Bangladesh have finally come to an agreement over the frighteningly complex former enclave-exclave dispute. In the end, India only lost about 40 square kilometers of land to Bangladesh, and now only a few enclaves and exclaves exist. Now let's head north. Now when you try to draw the shape of India, you might want to be careful which depiction you use. Some might use this picture, some might use this, some might use this, and those that don't really study very well might use this. The point is, the whole area is like the most heavily militarized, diplomatically stressed out region on the planet. It's already had like 4 wars in the past half century. Basically, India, Pakistan, and to some extent China all want the entire area for themselves, although it's more of like a Pakistan-India thing. In the China episode, we already discussed the Chinese disputes with India, so I won't cover those in this episode. If you want to learn more, just watch the China episode. But anyway, this entire entire area was a former domain known as the princely state of Jammu and Kashmir that was under royal Maharaja rulers all the way up until independence. Currently, this place is split up by this fenced-off militarized line known as the line of control between India and Pakistan. Why is this? Well, the quickest way I can put this...
Okay, the British are out. We get to take your land.
No, we want to be an independent princely state.
We're supposed to take your land, and majority of your people are Muslim, just like us, even though your ruler is Hindu as well.
Hey, India? Yeah? If you help me, I'll let you secede my territory to your land with autonomy. Deal. Ha! Your problem now! I love how Mike played India. He totally represents India. Oh, and keep in mind, Pakistan's capital, Islamabad, is less than 80 kilometers away from all that drama. The line of control meanders through the mountains until it stops at a point called NJ9842. This is where things get really crazy, because from there you hit the Siachen Glacier, the second longest non-polar glacier in the world, and this is pretty much the dead man zone. After point NJ9842, you hit the actual ground position line, a series of military outposts that extend all the way to the Chinese border. That means everything in this area is ground zero for the Indo-Pak tension. And you know, the crazy thing is there's actually literally small towns of normal, regular civilians living in these areas high up in the mountains, many of which just go about daily life, going to work and raising their families. Otherwise, they have a river dispute with Nepal and various river islands disputed with Bangladesh. Outside of all the dispute stuff though, India not only has the world's second largest road network and 3 of the world's top 10 megacities and their own space program, but they also have a copious abundance of landmarks and notable sites, way too many to list, but some of the ones that you guys, the Indian geographers, have told me to mention include places like the abandoned Danush Kodi Ghost City, Golconda Fort, the 4 pillars of Charminar, the Ajanta Buddhist art caves, the Ellora monolithic ruins, Mandu Fortress, the Golden Temple, which feeds over 100,000 people a day, the Gol Gumbaz Mausoleum, the Kalavantin Durg Post, the ruins of Hampi, the hill forts of Rajasthan, Shatrunjaya Hill, which is basically like a mecca for Jains, the Temple of the Bodhi Tree, Jal Mahal, Bangar Fort, the most haunted place in India, Mahabat Maqbara, and keep in mind, just like in China, you can find a Great Wall of India in Rajsamand. There's also the Paritala Anjaneya Temple with the largest statue in India depicting Hanuman, and at over 150 acres, the Sri Rangan Attaswamy Temple, the largest Hindu temple in the world. Oh yeah, and there's also that building with the stuff in the thing, whatever. Anyway, we could go on for centuries talking about India's rich constructed domicile, but what it lies on top of is even more fascinating. Now, don't make this mistake.
I'm going to India. All I need are my sandals and sunscreen.
Oh, crap. Now, as the 7th largest country in land area, India has a wide range of landscapes, climates, and elevations that all contrast from one corner to the other. First of all, let's talk about the north. India sits on the Indian tectonic plate that essentially smashed into the Eurasian plate, which in return created the largest mountain range in the world, the Himalayas. The force is so strong that it's estimated that the Himalayas grow about 2.4 inches or 6.1 centimeters every year. There's also where you can find Kanchenjunga, the tallest mountain in India, or the 3rd in the world, right on the border of Nepal. Keep your eye on these mountains. These are pretty much the source of most of India's major rivers that give life to the whole country. That's why India takes these mountains so seriously. You can also find the largest natural lake, Ular, up in the Jammu Kashmir area. Below the Himalayas, you reach the North Indian River Plain, sometimes referred to as the Indus Ganga. This is the most fertile part of India where the most important rivers like the Ganges and its tributaries flow. Heading a little south, you reach the Satpura and Vindhya ranges that pretty much divide North India from South India. On each side, you get the West and East Ghat Mountains, which in return creates this massive triangle thing called the Deccan Plateau. This place is moderately forested, especially in the east, in the Chotra Nagpur Plateau, where you get a section of the swampy Sundarbans that they share with Bangladesh. Check out the Bangladesh episode. Head a little west and you get the dry Thar Desert along the border with Pakistan, as well as the Ran of Kutch, known as the Salt Desert. And finally, the only active volcanic area would be the Andaman and Nicobar Islands, with Barren Island having actual conical eruptions and Bharatan having tame mud volcanoes. Now here's the thing, although India has a relatively high population density, they do relatively well with maintaining their ecological footing. In fact, in 2016, they beat a world record by planting, disputably, 50 million trees in one day. They've also agreed to reforest about 12% of the country by 2030. The most heavily forested area being the 7 sister states in East India. Now, one of the factors that contributes to this would be the fact that India has the lowest meat consumption in the world, with the highest population percentage of vegetarians at around 40%, most of whom are lacto-vegetarians that consume milk products. By the way, in India, when buying groceries, this label means vegetarian and this one means not vegetarian. Nonetheless, the remainder of the population does typically eat some kind of animal protein, mostly in the forms of seafood or chicken, but almost never beef or pork unless if you are part of the Muslim or Christian minorities scattered throughout the west and east areas. Now let's talk about the role of cattle, shall we? India has more cattle and livestock than anywhere else in the world at around 330 million. And it's interesting because since they have prevalent Hindu traditions, the killing of cows is illegal in many of the states except for a few, and each state has varying degrees of punishment for committing intentional cow slaughter. Keyword intentional. Cows accidentally get hit by cars all the time. Once a cow is too old to produce milk, it typically is released into the open to die naturally in the wild, ideally. Nonetheless, male cattle get it much worse, as as they are deemed as kind of useless. Some places use them as draft animals for labor, some religious sects use them as sacrifices, but otherwise they are typically sold to the underground market for beef or hides. To this day, there are about 6 times as many female cows as male cattle in India, so that means, yeah, something's happening to the males. Nonetheless, India does have the 3rd highest carbon emission rate after China and the US, 4th if you consider the EU. However, emission per capita, they rank pretty low at only about 2 kilotons per person. Contrast that with Qatar at about 40. There are 94 national parks, 501 animal sanctuaries across the country where you can find some of the national animals like the peacock, the Ganges River dolphin, the king cobra, the Indian elephant, and the highest population of Bengal tigers in the world, which are all highly protected. India also has the most irrigated land in the world, which allows them to become the #1 producer of multiple products like millet, bananas, lemons, limes, mangoes, ginger, chickpeas, milk, butter, fennel, jute, and about 75% of the world's spices alone come from India. Speaking of which, food! Typically you can find the staples roti, chapati, and naan in the north, idli and dosa in the south, and everybody eats rice. The more commonly commercialized Indian foods that we in the West grew up knowing, like samosas, tikka masala, tandooris, and my favorite Indian dish, palak paneer, these usually come from the northern regions of India. Seriously, India, you took spinach and made it fat. I love you guys. Otherwise, the West is mostly known for their chutneys and pickled foods, as well as beef, since there's a high number of Muslims and Christians. The South uses a lot more coconut and has some of the best curries like porials, sambras, rasams, and tutus. And the East is known for having the best desserts like peda, mishti doi, rasgulla, or shondesh. Speaking of which, India is so diverse and complex that sometimes even Indian people need translators when going to different states. It's about to get 10 times more confusing in about 3, 2, 1. Shashti Tharoor once said, "In India, we celebrate the commonality of major differences. We are a land of belonging rather than blood." First of all, India has a population of about 1.3 billion people and is the 2nd most populous country in the world after China, with about 18% of the world's population. About 72% of the country is Indo-Aryan and a quarter are Dravidian, and the majority of the remainder are Mongoloid, Asian, and other people groups. They also use the Indian rupee as their currency, they use the Type C, D, and M plug outlets, and they drive on the left side of the road. By the way, technically it's illegal for these banknotes to leave the country, but you guys have sent me a lot of them for fan mail for Fan Friday videos, so I don't want to go to jail again. Now keep in mind, those statistics that I just mentioned are incredibly generalized. Of the Indo-Aryan and Dravidian communities, there are about 2,000 different ethno-linguistic people groups in India, with about 645 district indigenous tribes, 52 major ones, so obviously we can't cover them all, but what we do know is that the North is very different from the South. For one, the North mostly speaks in languages that are all related to the Indo-Aryan branch, with languages like Hindi, Bengali, Punjabi, and Gujarati, whereas the South speaks a completely unintelligible Dravidian branch, with languages like Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, and Kannada.
Canada.
Otherwise, there's also pockets of Sino-Tibetan and Austroasiatic languages spoken in the far north and east.
Wait, so how do they all, like, communicate with each other?
Great question. Although India does not have an official language, there are 22 recognized national languages, and of these, 2 are the most prevalent, taught in schools and used by government officials, Hindi and English. And very often these 2 are like mixed mid-sentence. It's weird. Don't be surprised if you hear someone speaking Hindi and then suddenly finishing off in English. It's like,
Somebody goes to versus, and I was like, what this? And I was like trying to, like, why are you trying to do that?
I know, right? And the washing machine, I told them, but I said, a Bob Saget with a chainsaw. Now, of course, let's discuss the one thing that goes hand in hand with India, Hinduism. About 80% of India claims to be Hindu, or at least part of the Hindu practicing community. Now, we don't have time to explain everything about the tenets and multi-layered philosophies and practices of Hinduism. If you want to know, just talk to a Hindu person. But basically, one thing you do need to know is that Hindu-driven ideologies pretty much dominate most of life in India, everything from family to business. You will see colorful, mesmerizing shrines, temples, statues, and rituals being performed everywhere, even in public. On the Bharat Mata, the mother of India, statues are everywhere. She's like the symbol of India. The largest Hindu pilgrimage, the Kumbh Mela, happens every 3 years, rotating between 4 cities, in which the adherents bathe in the Ganges River and enjoy a massive festival with tens of millions of people. Like, seriously, you can practically see it happening from space. Now, a controversial topic in relation to Hinduism would be the caste system, which is basically a belief that people are born into a socioeconomic life that they are destined to serve into. Today, however, the system is more fluid and loose from what it used to be from a long time ago, and thanks to economic reforms, anybody with enough drive can kind of move up the social ladder regardless of birth. Nonetheless, India is home to every major religion in the world, even a few Jews, including the B'nai Menashe, an indigenous group that claimed to be one of the lost tribes of Israel. In fact, Judaism and Christianity actually had a head start in India way before it even kicked off in Europe. As tradition holds, Cochin, or Malabar Jews, migrated around 1000 BC to trade during the times of King Solomon, and in 53 AD, Thomas the Apostle of Jesus arrived from what is now the state of Kerala to establish the first church in India. Today, most Christians are found in the southwest and far east Seven Sisters regions. India also holds the highest population of Sikhs Sikhs, Jains, and Zoroastrians, mostly found in the north, and the second largest Muslim population in the world after Indonesia. Most Muslims are populated around the northwest areas by Pakistan or in the east by Bangladesh. Oh, and don't forget the Buddhists. In fact, Buddhism actually started in India. Today, the Dalai Lama even takes refuge in Tezpur in the state of Assam. Oh, that was a lot of information. Okay, so by now you can probably get a grasp of how incredibly mixed and diversified India's population is, but what exactly holds the country together? Well, for one, you kind of have to understand Indian history, which will take way too long to explain, but in the quickest way I can put it, Indus Valley, Maurya and Gupta empires, southern empires, Golden Age, Middle Kingdoms, a ton of new religions come flocking in, the north fell to the Delhi Sultanate, the south became the Vijayanagara Empire, Mughal Empire starts, British East India Company, direct British rule, nationalist movements, independence, republic, economic liberalization in 1991, and here we are today.
Vagina.
Essentially, India used to be made up of around 500 smaller royal princely states, and when the British came in, they kind of exploited them to manage such a huge population. Although India is a democratic federal republic and the largest democracy in the world, the old royal families still exist today, and although they have no political power, they hold high positions of influence in their communities across India. So today, technically, you could meet someone that would be considered an Indian prince or princess. Nonetheless, the biggest thing that really united Indians in the past 2 centuries would probably be their hatred of British rule. It was kind of like,
Well, this is not cool.
yep.
What do you say you and I work together and end this thing?
Essentially, one good thing you could say that came out of imperialism was that it kind of stopped all the internal squabbling and unified the groups towards one common goal, to get rid of imperialism. Today, Indians are just proud to be Indian. I mean, a Tamil soccer player can get cheered on by a Rajasthani, a Punjabi pop star can sell out tickets in Orissa. Speaking of which, all Indians love movies and music. India has the second largest film industry in terms of volume, pumping out nearly 2,000 films per year. Surprisingly, Nigeria pumps out more. However, the box office revenues gross out at only about $2 billion annually compared to Hollywood at over 10 billion, but still, it's impressive. And keep in mind, it's not just Bollywood, but it's also Tollywood, Gollywood, Collywood, Pollywood, and so on. There's like 20 different woods in India. Oh, and like every movie in India has at least one scene where everybody breaks out in song, and there's almost always a happy ending. Unfortunately, mainstream media has also put an aesthetic strain on many of the people, as it's almost become an obsession to be light or fair-skinned, causing people to go so far as to buy skin bleaching products. Some other controversies include things like illiteracy being an issue in many parts of the country, especially in the rural areas. But I mean, come on, when your country has literally hundreds of different writing systems, go figure. I mean, give them a break. Also, many of you guys, the Indian geographers, have asked me to bring awareness to the fact that India does unfortunately have some of the highest rates of human trafficking and child slavery. The government is trying to crack down and culture is slowly being reformed, but for now, it's a sad reality that still does exist. Hey, here at GN, we talk about the good and the bad. I'm just saying. Otherwise, sports do definitely tie everyone together as well, especially cricket, the national sport, even though they also used to do really well in field hockey. India also has a lot of their own indigenous sports like Dopkel in Assam, bull racing in Kerala, Insuknar, rod pushing in Mizoram, and Malakamba, this strange pole yoga gymnastics thing in the south. Otherwise, some notable people from India or of Indian descent might include people like Siddhartha Gautama or the Buddha, Mahavir, Ashoka the Great, Prithviraj Chauhan, Aurangzeb, Shivaji of the Maratha Empire, Mohandas or Mahatma Gandhi, Indira Gandhi, Subhash Chandra Bose, Jawaharlal Nehru, Rabindranath Tagore, C.V. Raman, Satyendra Nath Bose, Bhagat Singh, Dr. APJ Abdul Kalam, Shah Rukh Khan, Amitabh Bachchan, Amir Khan, Salman Khan, Priyana Chopra, Ben Kingsley, Sundar Pichai, Satya Narayana Nadella, A.R. Rahman, Sachin Tendulkar, and Mahendra Singh Dhoni. There's also literally millions of other famous people I missed out on. If you want to mention them, please, there's a comment section below. Use it. In the meantime, we gotta finish this info marathon, shall we? Now, no surprise, India is huge and therefore has a huge international outreach when it comes to diplomacy to almost everyone, except their immediate neighbors. First of all, countries with large population percentages of Hindus and Indians like Fiji, Guyana, Suriname, Trinidad and Tobago, Mauritius, and Malaysia typically stay close to India's roster of go-to friends. They enjoy cordial relations with trade. Now, the UK may have left on a sour note, but they still have a lot of ties to their former colonizer in terms of business and tourism. India is still part of the Commonwealth, not Commonwealth realm, there's a difference, and the UK has over 1.5 million citizens of Indian descent. As mentioned in the China episode, China is kind of like India's "I'm only here to do business with you and nothing else" friend, as drama still hasn't subsided in regards to the territory conflicts. Now, when it comes to the US, things started kind of sour back in the 70s during the Indo-Pak War of 1971, when the US sided with Pakistan, their arch nemesis. Today, relations have cooled off. Mostly, the US supports India's move towards democracy and is a key ally in the military conflicts in the Middle East. When it comes to their best friends, however, most of the Indians I talked to have said Russia and Bhutan. Russia because during the Indo-Pak Wars, Russia came in and supported them, and ever since then, each country has held a high position of respect for the other, especially as global superpowers. Bhutan and India India signed a treaty of friendship almost immediately after independence. The two countries have shared interests and a currency-pegged system as well. Bhutan even supported the annexation of their cousins in the Sikkim state into India, as it gave a nice buffer of land from China's stake to their claim. In conclusion, you will not find anywhere else on Earth like India. Thousands and millions of people inhabiting a colorful, majestic, green, slightly gritty at times slab of Earth, blessed and cursed in so many ways, yet wonderfully harmonized, mostly in a unity unlike anywhere else. In the end, that's India. Stay tuned, Indonesia is coming up next.
So this was all about India. Before I start, let me thank Dr. JB and ma'am for allowing me to interact with you. As it mentioned that my background is, I'm a mathematician by profession, and mathematics is my first love. But still there is something which is very close to my heart, and that is actually the different kind of social work is going on in my own land. And when I went for my interview in Fulbright, for a Fulbright fellowship in India, the final interview, there were many stages to you go for that selection, and when you get finally interviewed for that, so I got a question by United States of India Educational Foundation, which is a Indian government agency who takes care of Fulbright scholars of India. So they had asked me, if you go to United States, what is there to share about India? What kind of things you will share? How you will represent to India? And I mentioned in that interview that if I get a chance, I will be happy to share what social work is going on in India. And fortunately, after a week, I got an email from Jamie that will you visit to my place? And I said, yeah, I will be happy to visit if you allow me to share something. And he agreed to that, and finally it is come to existence. So I'm happy to share with you. We will have, so how we will go with this session, we will have one video, and I believe everything is there who a person called Dr. Abhay Bang will take care of. Many questions you may have later on. There is a small question answer session also in the video. So you will, many questions if you will get while listening to this video will be answered by Dr. Abhay Bang, and if there is any, I will try my best. Though I am not belongs to medical fraternity, I will try what experience I have on that basis. So like this video was in 2012. So there was a program by this World Economic Forum at India. So this lady from United States took an interview of Dr. Abhay Bang. So we will have this, as I said, this whatever I am going to show was there in 2012. So
okay, welcome everybody. I think we're going to start. We may be joined by other people coming in, but that doesn't matter. We'll get going on time. I'm delighted to have here today Dr. Abhay Bang, who I first met several years ago through the collaborative work that we were doing together and continue to do together with Save the Children, and that the organisation that Dr. Bang founded together with his wife 26 years ago, an organisation called SEARCH, which stands for Society for Education, Action and Research in Community Health, in an underdeveloped area in the state of Maharashtra. And Dr. Bang and his wife work with 120 villages to provide community-based healthcare, but also critically to do research. And they've developed a village healthcare program, which has now become nationally and internationally famous model that has influenced healthcare policy both here in India and in many other countries around the world. I think part of that is because of the power of the research that has been documented in publications like the Lancet. So it's a very persuasive model, not only on the ground, but in terms of being able to prove that it really does work and it's affordable and can be scaled up. Dr. Bang was also appointed as a member of the high-level expert group appointed by the Prime Minister here in India to prepare the blueprint of universal healthcare for India, and may have some views on that if we have time, and was also anointed by Time magazine in 2005 as the global health hero. He's certainly one of my heroes, and it's just a pleasure for me to be able to interview you. So, Dr. Bang, I wonder if you could start by telling us a little bit about how you've managed to achieve these quite startling breakthroughs in terms of reducing child mortality rates. Particularly interesting in the context here, we are hearing about how India is failing to, at the moment, be on track for its Millennium Development Goal 4 to reduce by 2/3 the number of children dying before their 5th birthday. And yet, you've been able to pioneer and prove a model that it is bringing those rates down quickly. So can you tell us a little bit about what you've achieved and what you've learned?
Thank you, Jasmine. It's not the first time that we are getting late in India in this room, but we are late in even achieving Millennium Development Goals. And the delay that would happen in achieving MDG 4 would mean for India alone 2 million excess child death. So delay is a major factor. As you said, mentioned earlier, the place where I work, or Gadchiroli, we are more known in India because of the Maoist activity and the violence in our district. It's a remote district, very poor, tribal, covered with forests. And nearly 27 years ago, Rani, my wife, and I decided to go there and started this organization, our own search, as you mentioned. After a few initial blunders, we realized that a doctor or a researcher should not begin with what he thinks is needed, but must begin with what people think is needed. So we started organizing People's Health Assembly every year. And then people told us what research we should be conducting. So one of the first 4 priorities that they mentioned, women said, our children are dying. And around the same time, one very major but unfortunate thing happened, that on one rainy season night, 2 tribal women knocked on our home and with a very sick child in hand. And within 2 minutes that I could examine, child had pneumonia, dehydration, malnutrition, 2-month-old child. And before I could do anything, the baby died. Now this woman and this child had come only from a distance of 4 kilometers from our hospital. And I could still, from their history, from their story, I could count that there were 18 causes why this child died. Distance, poverty, illiteracy, no bridges, no doctors, etc., etc. How can you save these children if there are 18 causes pitted against those helpless children? One solution that we could think of was, if babies cannot come to hospital must go to where the baby is there. And that's how this idea, which was later on named as home-based newborn and child care, that emerged. Why not train, if doctors are not willing to go to villages, why not train a literate village woman to become a newborn and child specialist of the village, on the lines of barefoot doctor in China? And that's how we began first measuring child mortality, infant mortality rate. As you know, we measure the child death rate or infant death rate. The IMR was 121 at that time. Pneumonia and newborn deaths were the most important causes of mortality. So we selected village women. We call them Arogya Doot, which literally means messengers of health or angels of health. So these village women who are trained and certified by search, they go from house to house, educate mothers about how to take care of health, of their own health, of babies' health. When the babies are born, they are present at the time of delivery, if it is home delivery. They start immediate breastfeeding. They take care of mother's health as well as baby's health, and then subsequently provide support to newborn baby. As we all know, the first 1 month of life of a human being is the riskiest period in human entire life. And the risk of death is enormous. At that time, it was 60 newborn babies died within first 1 month out of the total 1,000 babies born. Some of them were sick also. Now again, no doctor would reach there, so we had to train this village worker, Arogya Doot, even to treat sick neonates, which was considered a very bold thing, a lot of medical opposition. How can you train semi-literate women to provide treatment to newborn babies? World Health Organization used to say in those days, every sick newborn baby must be hospitalized, but there were no hospital within 300 kilometers of where we were working. This approach, we conducted a rigorous field trial, and it reduced newborn mortality rate by 70%. If reducing newborn mortality is considered a very difficult challenge. So if you reduce by 5% in developed country, it becomes headline in newspapers and television. Here it was reduced by 70%, and in that area, remote, difficult, poor, illiterate, and still the infant mortality rate, because of these women and the healthcare provided through these women, IMR reduced from 121 to 30. And mere coincidence, India chose that as the national goal subsequently to reduce IMR to the level of 30 in the next 10 years. These women had achieved it ahead of the national goal. Now this method we published in Lancet. Lancet not only published but later on selected this research as one of the vintage papers in the Lancet ever published in 180 years history. The main reason is that problem is not only local. Deaths of newborn babies and children. Even today, nearly 8 million children die world over every year. 1.5 million die in India alone. So how to save them with the limitations of hospital-based approach? So this approach probably showed the way that no, these newborn babies need not die and they would be saved. With this global need and the strong scientific evidence, it was picked up by journals, academicians, but also organizations like Save the Children, and through a very good shake hand of Search and Save the Children, and later on with Government of India, this model was scaled up. So now this has become the national policy in India. Health Ministry has made a national program out of this, and ASHA is a new community health worker in India. 800,000 ASHAs are being trained in this Gadchile model. And how? This is the bag. This is really the power bag which is used to empower that village woman, community health worker. If you can see, there's a logo here. That woman who is in that home with a baby in her hands, helpless, the baby could be sick, but you empower that woman with some knowledge, some training, and these equipments, and she can go from house to house, and she literally makes every home and hut, turns a home and hut into a newborn care intensive care unit. Because the results are so dramatic. So this has now become not only a national model in India, but 9 countries are emulating it in different parts. And in 2009, WHO, UNICEF, USAID and Save the Children came up with a global guidelines that in developing countries where there is no access to hospital-based care, this is the way to reduce newborn child mortality.
So 2 questions following on from that, great story. You mentioned opposition from the established medical profession. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? Why wouldn't they want this to work? I mean, we're all working on the same things here. And my second question is, what's inside that power bag?
That's a secret. Look, the medical opposition was not so much because of vested interest, because newborns in rural areas were nobody's vested interest. They were not providing business to anybody, so nobody was going to lose business by training community health workers. But it was more, a medical mindset always believes that only doctors can deliver best care and nobody else should ever deliver health care. This was in a way sort of violating those norms. But I must admit that the pediatrics leadership in this country had been very generous. It looked at the evidence, it looked at the national need, and then subsequently pediatrics and the neonatologist leadership of this country have vigorously supported this model. Now this bag consists of few equipments and things which altogether cost not much really, just $30. But this is health education flip chart. We call it dialogue with mothers. This is almost like a knowledge vaccine. Using this, a mother can be educated by a health worker as to how to take care of her own health. This is a warm bag. Babies who are preterm, low birth weight or hypothermic, how to keep them warm at home in cold winter or in rainy season. They don't have electricity, they don't have heaters, there are no incubators. So this warm bag, like a sleeping bag, this keeps such babies warm. And then babies who are born at home but who don't breathe immediately, they need immediate breathing support. If you don't provide them breathing support, within next 2 minutes, they are dead. So this is called ambu bag, which is usually used by anesthetists for emergency oxygenation of patients who are unconscious. She is trained to use this and give breathing support to baby. This is the weighing scale. So there are some equipment which allow thermometer, some which allow to take care of the baby and keep baby warm, early breastfeeding, and then if it's sick, treat.
And tell me a little bit more then about training these, as you say, illiterate women often in the village to be able to perform these functions. I've just come from the plenary session on missing women, and in fact one of the points that came through was the status of particularly rural women, and how it's a problem on the one hand, but also potentially a huge opportunity. Tell me about, you presumably see these women more of as an opportunity. So tell me about that.
It's an enormous opportunity. And the type of women who can reduce child mortality, a problem which some government of India or society as a whole is unable to handle, and these women are able to handle. These women are mothers, grandmother, traditional birth attendant, and this new worker, as I mentioned, messenger of health, or Asha now at the national level. She's from the same village. She's not brought from outside, so she's not posted there. She's not paid salary. She's selected from the village. She's serving her own community, and she receives 26 days training. At the time of selection, we look for certain qualities, certain attributes, which is most important. Her literacy is not that important as her attributes are. So we look for certain attributes. After 26 days training, this training is divided into multiple small parts. So every month she receives 3 days training and then works in her own community. So her own community is practically her training laboratory, where she weighs baby, she examines them, takes their temperature, talks to women, explains them, and that's how gradually over a period of 1 year her skills are built up. She goes through rigorous evaluation. A supervisor visits her once in every 15 days, and then finally when she passes that evaluation, the training method standardized that we have standardized, in that we found that 92% of village Arogya Doot scored more than 70% marks. Here in India, I became doctor if I score more than 50%. But for Arogya Doot, we have kept it a little higher. It has to be 70%. She is going to deal with sick babies. 92% Arogya Doot performed extremely well. So this method of training is now standardized, and as I said earlier, 800,000 Ashas in India are being trained using this method to provide home-based newborn and child care at the doorstep in Indian villages.
Well, that's very impressive. So you mentioned about when you became a doctor. Now, when you did become a doctor, what is it that made you decide to take this slightly alternative route rather than becoming a highly paid consultant in a hospital or perhaps go overseas? What inspired you to take this route and to dedicate your life to this area of research and development?
It's a little long story, but I'll cut it short. Nearly 65 years ago, my father, who was a professor of economics, and he taught in one of Mahatma Gandhi's college. So he wanted to go to the US for studying economics further. Before leaving for the US, he went to see Mahatma. And then bowed to him, asked for his blessings. And Mahatma Gandhi looked at him for just few seconds and then said, if you want to study economics, go to the villages of India and not the US. Right there and then he tore away his travel documents, his admission papers in the US, and within 1 month he started with his students, he went and started living in a village. So when I finished my medical education, post-graduation, etc., his words were still ringing in our ears. And commitment was that we must be able to provide health care to the villages of India. Unknown path, did not know how to do that, did not know even what the main problems were. And that's why when we went to Gadchiroli, then we thought that if we anyway want to do this, let's go to the place which is least served, which is the most difficult. If something works here, it ought to work everywhere in India. So we chose Gadchiroli. That's why we named our organization Search. We didn't have answer. We were not lights. We were searching in the dark. And the place we live, our headquarter campus that we have started there, we call it Shodha Gram. Indians here would understand the word quickly. Shodha means, again, search. So it's a search village, searching in darkness. Now, that's how my journey is. Look, my childhood was spent in Mahatma Gandhi's ashram. And that ashram is called Seva Gram, which in Indian language means a village for service. So I started from Seva Gram and ended up founding Shodha Gram.
And you were fortunate enough to find a wife who clearly wanted to achieve the same things in life as you.
Well, we were classmates. We fell in love with each other mainly because we had similar dreams.
How wonderful. What a lovely story. So now tell me, at the World Economic Forum, as you know, one of the big sort of focus of discussions is around how multi-sector collaboration between different types of organisations, government, businesses and NGOs can work together. I believe you've got some thoughts in terms of how NGOs, organisations like Search can work together, particularly with business. Can you tell me about that?
Look, for any collaboration, I believe that mere convenience is not enough. There must be matching of values and goals and then subsequent practical issues. So the first thing which has to occur, do the values and goals of corporate sector and NGOs match? That's a big question. And I think we must begin a little bit philosophically there. Because without that clarification, mere convenient working together won't last. Charles Handy, who I don't know whether he's still alive, but he was a very well-known management guru. He once beautifully said, that communism had a beautiful dream, but it did not know methods how to bring that dream into reality. And then he said, capitalism has wonderful methods, but it has no dream. And if capitalism has no dream, then we'll have to invent. Capitalism needs a soul, it needs heart. Later on, as the corporate social responsibility came into vogue, I think it's a very good beginning. It's a very good beginning, but there again, that social responsibility remains peripheral for the corporation. The main job is earning profit. Michael Porter has recently written a cover story on Harvard Business Review, and he has put forward this concept of shared value. To quote his words, he said, we'll have to reform capitalism. Not only at the periphery, but the very purpose of capitalism probably has to change, and it has to become shared value so that the corporates and the people, customers, as well as employees, all they share similar value. To take this little back, I am very surprised, but Mahatma Gandhi proposed something nearly 70 years ago, which now Michael Porter and Bill Clinton and Bill Gates are equaling. He said that look, a corporation or company has to be run like a public trust. A trustee of a public trust is dedicated, is committed, he has passion, he works very hard, he or she, but he doesn't own it. Actually, modern corporations also more or less run in a similar fashion. The CEO or the managing director doesn't own that company, but still he runs with dedication and passion. So, a little shift in the outlook that corporates corporations, companies need to be run like a public trust. Then that immediately can reduce distance between NGOs and corporates, and both may share similar value and similar goal. And there are n number of ways in which companies and NGOs can work together on social problems. We are talking a lot about India, economic superpower, or fantastic growth story, etc., etc. But I'm sure business leaders here very much realize that unless economic growth is accompanied by inclusive growth and also social growth, the otherwise social problems can greatly undermine the economic story. It's not only about economic growth issue, it's also that health is a precondition for economic growth, but more than that, good health is the goal of growth. Why do you need money if you don't need health, if you are not going to achieve health? So health is not a means for economic growth, it's an aid for economic growth. So how can we work together? My all experience is in the field of health, so naturally I am going to take examples from the same field. But let me start from a small thing. As I said earlier, this is the power bank. And there are many such innovations and products which, if scaled up through social marketing or through other ways which corporates would know better than I do, but if they are scaled up and made available in large number where they are needed, that could very rapidly reduce.
So this bag, for example, at the moment is put together by your own organisation, is it? It's not as if one company is contributing to creating.
No, actually, we buy products from various other companies, we assemble them, and search looks for certain quality, and search has good credibility, so people really use it. So it can be done by others as well, but it's not. We don't have any sort of patent on it. But my point is that this kind of power equipments which will empower people for self-care, for community-based care, so they don't have to wait for doctors and hospitals to either arrive or where they would never reach. And so, propagating this kind of products and solution in large number, that's where skills and resources of corporates could be enormously useful. There are other ways in providing service to one mother, newborn and child in a village would cost in Indian terms about 500 rupees per year, $10 per year. So one mother, one newborn, one child, and then depending on your economic willingness to offer, one could adopt thousands of mothers, newborns and children, not feeding them yourself, but empower them, empower those village women to take care of mothers and newborn children in their own village. So I would say multiply empowerment. And then of course one could go even further. We have recently proposed model of universal health care for India at a very small cost, 0.5% of per capita GDP. At that cost, one can provide universal health care at the village level, which would mean about 4 lakh rupees per village per year, 400,000 rupees per village per year, and you can provide from self-care, health education, community-based care and primary health care and early secondary care. Everything can be provided at such smaller cost. So corporates can really join hands with NGOs, with the social sector, with organizations like Save the Children, so that we can multiply this process. Unless we achieve women's empowerment, unless we achieve knowledge, health literacy, and unless we achieve what I use a word from Indian languages, Arogya Swaraj, which literally means our health in our own hands. So we need to empower people for that, and that can only ensure